Africa does not enter the modern world by choice. It is pulled in, measured, and redefined by forces it does not control. Welcome to another story in the Brief Universal History of Civilizations series. Today I'll tell you about Africa from about 1500 to 1900, an age shaped by slavery, empire, and extraction. This is not a story of isolation or backwardness. It is a story of forced connection. The Atlantic becomes the horizon that matters more than the land behind it. External demand rewires movement, power, and morality. Trade no longer means exchange between equals. It means integration as a labor reservoir, a source of bodies first, then raw materials. Across these centuries, Africa is not simply conquered, it is absorbed into a system designed elsewhere. Old structures strain, adapt, and fracture. New ones rise that serve foreign logics rather than local meaning. States appear strong and hollow at the same time. This episode follows what happens when a continent is made global without being allowed to be sovereign, when connection brings not balance, but extraction. By the early 16th century, the shoreline doesn't feel familiar anymore. A boy stands on the sand beside his father's canoe and counts ships as they anchor offshore. Tall hulls, white sails, flags he can't read. He doesn't ask about the rains anymore. He asks how many vessels have turned up, you know. The elders used to watch the seasons. Fishing followed cycles. Trade moved along the coast and inland rivers. Now, attention's turned outward. The horizon matters more than the land behind the village. Goods appear that were never seen before. Metal tools, cloth, weapons. The exchange feels lopsided, but it grows fast. Too fast to turn down. The boy's father trades carefully. He knows how to bargain. He doesn't yet understand scale. The ships come back again and again, larger each time. Their captains talk about plantations across the ocean, about labor shortages, about demand that never ends. What they want most isn't gold or ivory. It's people. The rhythm of life shifts. Raids increase inland. Old networks get stretched. Routes that once linked communities now pull them apart. Wealth piles up unevenly. Power starts flowing to whoever can supply what the ships demand. Violence moves closer to the coast, pulled by prices set far away. The boy senses this isn't a meeting of equals anymore. The visitors don't adapt, they take. The terms are fixed somewhere else. Decisions made across the ocean arrive here as pressure, not negotiation. Zoom out a bit. From the late 15th into the 16th century, European oceanic expansion creates the Atlantic system. Africa gets pulled into a global economy designed outside the continent. Integration comes through force and imbalance, as labor becomes the main export, fueling capital accumulation in Europe. As evening falls, the boy watches the ships settle against the dark water. His world now points outward. The Atlantic has become the center. Africa has entered a system it didn't choose, and one that won't let go easily. In the late 17th century, night breaks without warning. Shouting cuts through the dark. Fire follows. A family wakes to noise and smoke, not knowing where to run. By the time the first roof goes down, the village doesn't exist anymore as a place. Paths, houses, family ties vanish in less than an hour, you know. They scatter in different directions. Parents lose sight of kids. Names get called once, then not again. People who live together their whole lives get pulled apart by force, not choice. Movement isn't travel anymore, it's capture. The road doesn't lead somewhere, it takes away. At dawn, the ground's empty. Tools lie where hands dropped them. Fields stand abandoned. Survivors hide or run, carrying nothing that explains who they were. Memory has nowhere to shelter. Routes that once linked markets and marriages now point toward chains and ports. The map itself turns hostile. This kind of movement teaches fast. Don't gather, don't rebuild where you were. Trust shrinks to the smallest group that can run together. Communities break into units designed to survive the next raid. Kinship narrows, stories get shorter, safety takes the place of continuity. Inland, armed groups organize around the trade. Raiding becomes routine. Violence gets rewarded with goods and guns. Regions empty out as people get removed faster than families can form. The land stays, society thins. Zoom out a bit. From the 17th into the 18th century, the transatlantic slave trade turns migration into a weapon. Militarized raiding spreads. Forced movement destroys social memory and demographic balance, pushing societies into emergency survival mode. As daylight fades, the ones who escaped don't go back. Going back would just bring it again. The old map is gone. Movement has changed what it means. It no longer helps you adapt to the world. It's used to break it. By the early 18th century, the courtyard fills with sound as metal is laid out on woven mats. A ruler walks slowly between rows of muskets, lifting one, weighing it, testing the lock. The weapon matters more than bloodline now. Whoever controls supply controls obedience, you know. Messengers wait at the edge of the space. They talk about prices on the coast, about ships anchored offshore, about what traders will pay this season. The ruler listens carefully. Access to markets decides strength. Guns bring captives. Captives bring guns. Authority turns on how fast you can trade, not on memory or ritual. The old stories still go around. Ancestors, sacred origins, royal bloodlines. People say them out loud, but they don't decide outcomes anymore. A rival with better weapons can wipe out history in one campaign. Victory proves who should rule more cleanly than birth ever did. Power speeds up, meaning lags behind. Orders come fast, forces get reorganized, raids get planned with precision. Firearms concentrate power quickly. The state hardens around control of violence and access to export routes. Administration grows where trade demands it. Tradition gets adjusted, not consulted. Stability depends on keeping the flow going, I mean. He understands the deal without giving it a name. His kingdom isn't growing from its own logic anymore. It's adapting to demands set somewhere else. Strength only gets rewarded as long as it feeds the system. Weakness gets punished immediately. No appeal. Zoom out a bit. From the late 17th into the 18th century, states like Dahomey and Asante reshaped themselves around access to European firearms markets. Militarization is driven by outside forces. Power becomes managerial, organized to service extraction rather than build an empire on its own terms. As evening comes, the weapons get handed out. Loyalty follows the gun. The ruler sits alone for a moment. His power is real, but it comes with conditions. The kingdom stands, but it stands inside a logic it doesn't control. By the mid-18th century, the meeting ends quickly. An elder sits with a small group at the edge of the settlement, listening to numbers. How many are demanded? What will be paid? Which goods or weapons will come back in exchange? The discussion doesn't drag on because there's not much to argue about. Someone has to go, you see. The elder looks across the faces in front of him. Eyes turn away. These are neighbors, cousins, people whose kids played together. He weighs what he was taught against what's now pressing in from outside. The old rules still exist, but they don't decide anymore. Price does. Refusing would bring retaliation from armed groups nearby. Going along might keep the rest alive. He makes the choice. The decision survives by being called necessity, not cruelty. Language shifts. Right and wrong give way to calculation. Who can be spared? Who won't be missed straight away? The maths is brutal, but it's clear. Moral debate collapses under pressure it was never built to carry. Survival demands taking part. By morning, the ones chosen are tied up and led away. The settlement stays, but something essential has been taken out. Trust thins. Silence spreads. People stop gathering in big groups. Stories shorten. The elder feels it straight away. Authority still works, but it no longer protects meaning, I mean. This isn't slow cultural decay. It's a structural override. When human beings become the most valuable commodity, older moral limits fail. They weren't designed for this scale or this incentive. The system doesn't ask belief to change, it rewards behavior until belief follows. Zoom out a bit. From the 17th into the 18th century, plantation economies create relentless demand for labor. Human life gets priced, traded, and treated as normal cargo. Internal moral breaks get dismantled by outside reward, not by persuasion. As night falls, the elder sits alone. The community still exists, rituals carry on, but a line has been crossed. People have become currency, and morality has been pushed aside so the system can keep moving. By the late 18th century, the council gathers, but no one's really convinced. A noble sits at the center, listening to claims that sound like they've been rehearsed. Each contender talks about tradition and right, but everyone in the room knows what actually decides it. Who controls the coast? Who's got access to ships, guns, and credit, you know? Foreign agents hover nearby. They don't bother hiding what they want. Support gets offered quietly, tied to promises about trade and delivery. Someone mentions consent from the people, then it gets brushed aside. Victory will go to the claimant who locks in outside backing fastest. Time matters more than legitimacy. Speed matters more than agreement. The noble remembers how succession used to work. Elders debated. Bloodline carried weight. Authority followed recognition. Now, recognition follows supply. A ruler without market access can't pay soldiers. A ruler without soldiers can't rule. Legitimacy becomes a shadow that trails behind power, not its source. The state still exists on paper, titles stay, rituals get performed, but decisions don't really bind anymore because no center can enforce them without outside help. Each compromise weakens the whole. Authority survives in form, but meaning drains away. Governance turns brittle, I mean. Rivals pull together, armed followers funded through trade. Violence comes in bursts, never fully resolved, always coming back. The noble sees the pattern. The contest isn't about governing well. It's about surviving the next intervention. Unity attracts pressure. Division feels safer because it's harder to control. Zoom out a bit. From the 18th century onward, European interference increasingly shapes African successions. Trade access replaces consent as the basis of rule. Central authority hollows out before formal conquest even arrives, leaving states that are present but empty. As the meeting ends, nothing feels final. The noble leaves, knowing power now depends on forces beyond the land. The state still stands, but it doesn't explain itself anymore. Authority remains, stripped of legitimacy, waiting for whoever the system picks next. By the late 19th century, the work starts before sunrise. Hour bends over palm fruits, hands moving fast, cutting, gathering, loading. There aren't any chains on her wrists. There are lists instead. Numbers written far away decide how much has to be delivered by the end of the day, you see. The quotas don't budge. Fail, and punishment comes without obvious violence. Access to land gets tighter. Tools vanish. Trade goods stop arriving. Everything depends on hitting the numbers. The language is new. The pressure isn't. Control doesn't need to use force when dependence does the job. Awa knows the older stories. Her grandmother talked about people taken in the night, ships that never came back. That trade's finished, they say. The law says so. But the rhythm feels the same. Labor leaves. Value piles up somewhere else. Decisions never get made here. The shape's changed. The direction hasn't. Palm oil takes the place of bodies. Rubber follows. Cocoa later. The product shifts, but the root stays the same. Extraction moves outwards. Control moves inwards. European agents set prices and standards. Local middlemen enforce delivery. It runs smooth because it doesn't need chains anymore, I mean. The village reorganizes itself around production. Time gets counted in quotas, not seasons. Food crops shrink. Cash crops spread. Choice slips away quietly. Awa works harder than the ones before her, but she isn't working for herself. Survival depends on doing what you're told, not owning anything. Zoom out a bit. After the slave trade is abolished in the 19th century, industrial Europe needs raw materials instead of workers. Commercial control spreads inland. Extraction gets legalized, formalized, stabilized. The structure's still there, they just change the name. As evening comes, Awa washes oil off her hands. The count is recorded. The chains are gone. The system isn't. What used to move people now moves goods, but the power still flows the same way. By the late 1880s, the meeting ends in less than an hour. An administrator unfolds a map on the table and draws a line across it with his finger. The line cuts through rivers, paths, and family land without slowing down. A community leader watches in silence. No one's moved. Everything's changed, you know. Paper now decides where authority begins and ends. One village gets placed on one side. Its fields end up on the other. Kinship stretches across a border that didn't exist the day before. The leader asks who'll settle disputes, who collect dues, who protect travelers. The answers get written down. They don't get discussed. Outside, soldiers wait with rifles. Their presence settles questions fast. Categories arrive fully formed. Tribe, district, reserve, labor zone. None of these words come from the land. They come from somewhere else and demand obedience. What once adjusted through custom now freezes into rule. The leader sees the danger. These borders don't organize life, they break it. Trade routes bend or snap. Authority splits. Ritual calendars lose their anchors. The state speaks a foreign language and only counts what it can take. Governance becomes admin. Meaning drains away, I mean. This isn't state building, it's locking people in place. Societies get squeezed into templates that can't respond to change. Systems that once absorbed shock are denied movement. Flexibility becomes illegal. Survival becomes avoidance. Zoom out a bit. In the 1880s and 1890s, European rivalry hardens into partition. Decisions made in Berlin turn into lines enforced by superior military force. Africa gets reduced to administrative units designed for control and extraction, not for how people actually live. As dusk settles, the leader goes home. His people are now split by a rule they didn't choose and can't change. The map is neat, reality is cut. What follows isn't order, but a kind of paralysis that'll last long after the ink dries. By the early 20th century, the office smells of paper and dust. A colonial official scans figures sent in from inland posts. Output, shortfall, transport delays. He writes in a language few people around him actually speak, using categories that fit neatly into reports, but don't really match the land, you know? Outside the town, under a tree at the edge of the settlement, an elder sits with kids gathered close. He speaks in a local language that never shows up in any official register. He teaches names of places that no longer exist on maps, stories that don't follow the borders, rituals tied to seasons that survive even though fields keep getting disrupted. The kids repeat the words carefully. This knowledge isn't written down. It's carried with them. The official gets moved to a new post every few years. Policies shift, administrations merge and fall apart. Extraction keeps going under different names. Rubber, minerals, crops. The economy bends around demand set somewhere else. When one system fails, another one takes its place. Nothing here is designed to last. The elder stays. He adapts what he teaches. Some stories get shorter, others go underground. Meaning gets squeezed into gestures, songs, family rules. Survival doesn't need a state. It needs continuity small enough to move. Memory learns to travel light. The difference is uneven. One side controls resources without really belonging anywhere. The other belongs without having control. States turn up and disappear. Economies twist and reshape. What lasts lives below the surface of administration, inside language, ritual, and everyday life. Zoom out a bit. After the destruction of local systems and decades of rule based on extraction, African societies lose political control but hang on to fragments of meaning. These endure because they're not centralized and can't be fully taken over. As evening comes, the official closes his ledger. The elder finishes the lesson. The state speaks a foreign language. Memory doesn't. What breaks is obvious. What lasts works quietly, waiting for conditions that don't yet exist. Africa does not lose its future in these centuries. It loses control over the terms on which its present is lived. What is gained from about 1500 to 1900 is connection. Africa becomes central to a global system that feeds empires, industries, and markets far beyond its shores. Its labor, land, and resources power the modern world. Africa is not marginal, it is essential. What is lost is agency. Movement turns into capture. Trade becomes extraction. Power detaches from legitimacy. States are reshaped, hollowed, or frozen into forms that serve outside demand. Violence is normalized. Memory is forced to retreat into smaller, quieter spaces. Here is the thought to carry forward. Africa is not destroyed by tradition or isolation, but by integration without sovereignty. The system does not erase meaning. It makes meaning costly to sustain. And the story does not pause here. In the next episode, we return to Europe, where fracture is not imposed from outside, but erupts from within. Faith, authority, and order break apart under their own weight. Next time, we follow the age of fracture, from about 1525 to 1650, and watch how a continent already connected to the world begins to come apart at the center. What you just saw is a single moment. But the history of civilization isn't made up of isolated moments. It's patterns of different mentalities. It begins with a campfire. Someone sits down, someone else listens, and for the first time, experience becomes memory. This scene is an opening, and everything flows from it. From the first campfire to the last city burning on a phone screen. The YouTube series is drawn from a book that sketches a mental map of humanity, how people thought, believed, and made sense of the world across 5,000 years and 50 chapters. Told not through rulers and dates, but through the lives of people who carried civilizations forward without even realizing it. The book, The Brief Universal History of Civilizations, goes beyond the YouTube series with over 50 maps, available on Amazon. Link in the description.